Since it is still Christmas time, today I decided to review this Christmas classic called It's a Wonderful Life. The thing about this movie is that it has a very obvious message, a message that glorifies human life, and a message of optimism that triumphs over nihilism. But I would also argue that this movie is actually much darker and in many ways much deeper than it seems on the surface. So essentially, what happens in this movie, so if you don't want it spoiled, then don't watch the review. What happens in this movie, we follow the life of a small businessman called George Bailey, and for his entire life he's frustrated because he stays in this small American town instead of going to a big town and pursuing his dreams, getting an education, a lot of money, living the adventure of his life. Instead of that, he stays in this small town and helps others and inherits a family business. And that leads to a lot of frustration, and when his business goes bankrupt, he decides to kill himself. And as he's about to jump from the bridge, an angel appears and decides to show him his life. Actually, not his life, decides to show him how the world would look without him. And it is then that he realizes how much good he has done. Now, what is very bold about this message, I would argue, is that it goes against our ultra individualistic mentality that we have today, and that is, today the mainstream message always seems to be follow your dreams, whatever they are. But George Bailey does the opposite. He sacrifices his dreams for his family, for his community, and he never follows his dreams. But I find this message to be not only more actually moral, but also more realistic. Most people don't have their dream job. Does that mean that their life sucks, that their life is bad? This movie tells us the opposite. Just like the name says, it's a wonderful life. This movie tries to glorify the common man and his ordinary life, which is what I think that in these modern times we don't often do. And what's also interesting about this movie is that, or at least I would argue, that the movie is anti-capitalist. Now, before you tell me I'm crazy, like, this movie obviously has a lot of Christian morality in it. It's a Christmas movie. Well, the main bad guy in this movie is an evil capitalist, Potter, that tries to monopolize the entire city. And in the nightmare vision of George Bailey, a world without him, he realizes that entire town would be owned by this evil capitalist, and that almost seems to be this vision like something out of the Communist Manifesto, where Marx argues that capitalism always leads to monopolies, and that monopolies ruin the market in the long run. And Stalin also repeats this argument, actually. But okay, now I'm not only talking about what happens in the movie, but what's also interesting is that Frank Capra, the director, in the 1950s was accused of communism by McCarthy, because some of his screenplay writers used to be communists, members of the American Communist Party. Like, if you maybe watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that movie is almost explicitly, well, I would say anti-capitalist, not necessarily communist, but yeah, definitely for today's standard a very let's say socialist movie. But yeah, this movie, well, the thing is, It's a Wonderful Life. It is so it is such a deep movie. Actually, it is about so many things. On the one hand, it is just about a guy finding meaning in his life and realizing that you don't always need to achieve something big in order to be happy. But this movie also argues against the what I would call the capitalist logic, and that is that people would always be selfish. That is generally used as one of the main arguments against communism and socialism, that people are inherently selfish. And this movie presents us a hero that does the opposite. Like he doesn't pursue his dreams, which again in today's culture many would see as a mistake. He doesn't pursue his dreams. Instead, he helps his community. And the movie actually glorifies that sacrifice. And yeah, I would argue that the movie is also smart enough to ask the question, like, did he really make the mistake? Like, maybe he should have pursued his dreams, but the movie leaves that, I would argue, as an ambiguous question. But yeah, ultimately the message is, look, things, they don't always turn out the way you want it to, but life is still worth living. But yeah, I also wanted to emphasize in this video that Frank Capra, while he wasn't a communist himself, definitely did sympathize with some Marxist ideas. And that, what's kind of funny is that this movie, at the same time, it is the ultimate Christmas Christian morality anti-nihilism movie, and it also has a lot of like anti-capitalist elements in it, even to the point where it literally seems to be taken out of the Communist Manifesto. For example, there is a scene in a movie where the main bad guy is called by a congressman, and he says like, Mr. Congressman, you'll have to wait. So what this movie is essentially telling us is that this rich capitalist actually controls the American Congress. Like a message that I would argue still is controversial today, although not many would argue against such a message in today's society. And I even think, now tell me if I'm crazy, but I even think that the movie shields itself from the accusation of being communist by having Christian morality. Like, because we are talking about 1946, Churchill already said that the Iron Curtain has descended on Europe. So it's already kind of, you're already walking on thin ice with anti-capitalist takes, especially if you're a respectable movie director. But yeah, the movie is, I would argue, maybe primarily anti-individualism and pro-collectivist morality. So it is not necessarily communist, but yeah, in some of its aspects, I would argue that it is not just a Christmas movie, but also at least a socialist propaganda movie, if not a like Marxist or communist movie. Okay, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you liked this.